Hey everybody, welcome back to Dave's Kitchen, Dave's Open Range. Tonight we're making chicken fried rice. Classic around this household. It's a pretty simple operation, pretty simple recipe, but as usual it's a little bit about technique, not just ingredients. So we'll go through it. I'll have to splice a handful of videos together, but we're having chicken breast and some diced carrots and some edamame, which are soybeans, and some key ingredients like toasted sesame oil and ginger, but I'll talk about that when we get to putting those in. So we're going to get started here in a minute, but just want to do a little intro to chicken fried rice, a really good deal around here. Okay, we're going to get started by sauteing the chicken and the onion. So like I said, I'm going to use a couple of the key ingredients in this dish, in my opinion, are toasted sesame oil and a fair amount of ginger. So because of the toasted sesame oil, I'm going to not put very much olive oil in there to saute the chicken and the onion. It's just a diced up white onion, nothing special, and diced up chicken breast. This is two breasts. You can use thighs. Sometimes I actually prefer the thighs, but we're going to use breast today. And you know how it goes when you're cooking grocery store chicken. It can be pretty watery, so I like to cook that pretty thoroughly, cook all the water off, and it takes a few minutes. And because we're going to be using soy sauce later, I'm not going to put very much salt in there. I'm just going to put a little pepper. Yep. I'm going to put a little bit of salt, but not very much, because like I said, I'll be putting some soy sauce in there later. The salt does help the onion sort of de-water itself and saute up nicely. Over here I've got some brown rice cooking. You can do brown rice. I cook brown rice pretty much like pasta, which is to say cook it in too much water and then drain it just like pasta. Unlike white rice where you cook it sort of a 2-to-1 ratio. Turn the heat up on this chicken and onion. No garlic. The spices in here are soy sauce, ginger, toasted sesame oil. I'll write this down in the description, so don't worry about keeping track. And I got some carrots and frozen edamame. Not sure you're familiar with edamame, but it's handy because it comes frozen, so you can keep it in the freezer. They look like lima beans, kind of, but they are sort of a blanched soybean. They're cheap, they're healthy, they're handy because you can keep them in the freezer and just throw a handful in to some stir fry or whatever it is you're working on. So I like to use that. But because that's frozen and the carrots are uncooked, I'll put the carrots in relatively soon so they can cook nicely. I personally like, the family likes the onion to cook down thoroughly. Don't like any crunch in the onions, that's why I've got them in there now. When it's all said and done, it'll almost be as if the onions aren't there. But of course, if they weren't there, you'd notice that they weren't there in the flavor. So we're going to cook this down. Let's see, I am going to put the carrots in there right now so they can fully cook. Don't want them to brown necessarily, but so they can fully cook. The other key thing to chicken fried rice, I mean, it would be fine if you didn't do this, but at the end we're going to put 3 eggs in here after the rice goes in. So the eggs are key, binds it all together, and it would be fine without the eggs, but it gives it that sort of, you know, chicken fried rice feel with the eggs in there. So I'm going to leave you for now. We're going to let this cook a little bit, and we'll check back in a minute when the chicken and carrots are cooked down. Okay, it's been a few minutes since the chicken and the carrots and the onions have been sauteing, like maybe 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm going to put about a healthy 3/4 of a cup of the edamame in there. And at this point, we're going to put a little bit of, there's no salt in there yet. So I'm going to put a couple of tablespoons of soy sauce in there now so it can salt up a little bit. And then, starting to smell good. And then once that cooks down, especially gets all the water out, we'll start thinking about putting the ginger in there and more soy sauce, and get the rice in there and the eggs, and it's going to be really good. You can see it's got a nice color to it. Smells great. As the carrots cook down, they get a little sweetness, as you know, and the onions as well. Like I said, we don't prefer garlic in here, but garlic would be fine if you like garlic and onion. But I think for chicken fried rice, it's nice to not have that pungency of the garlic. So, like I said, I'll have the ingredients in the description, but keeping it pretty simple so far. And I'll check back in with you in probably 5 minutes when this is cooked down a little bit more. And we'll drain the rice. That brown rice, if you're not used to cooking brown rice, I know this spatula has chicken on it, but I'm putting it in boiling water, so no worries. Brown rice is really good because it has a little bit more of a meatier, hearty texture for this dish, and dishes like it. So again, cook it like pasta. It takes maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And you can sort of tell by looking at the grains when the grains start to split apart and open up a little bit, which is close to now. They'll be done, and they can sit a minute while I get ready to put it in. So we'll check back in a few minutes. Okay, it's been 6 or 8 minutes, I think. So we're going to take it to the next step. This stuff is pretty much cooked, but at this point I'm going to put in the toasted sesame oil, which is kind of critical. Gives it a great flavor, maybe a tablespoon and a half. And stir that around a little, gives it a great smell. It's getting slightly, all that stuff's getting slightly brown, that's great. And then this is just straight regular ground ginger. You can use fresh ginger if you want, but I'm actually not a huge fan of ginger except for this dish. So I don't like fresh ginger, it's a little strong for me and the family. So that's about maybe a teaspoon of ground ginger. And I'm going to put a little more soy sauce in there, some salt and some liquid. Probably a couple, 2 or 3 tablespoons. That's looking really great, smelling really great. I'm going to let this cook for about a minute or 2, and then we'll come back and put the rice in and the eggs, and we'll be done. I should mention, I said brown rice, but this is brown basmati rice, one of my favorite rices. It's a little like jasmine insofar as it has a kind of a sweet flavor after it's cooked. It's a little bit expensive, but even expensive rice is cheap in the grand scheme. So that's brown basmati rice. That's 2 cups of uncooked rice. So it's going to be kind of a big dish. It's Sunday. It'll be Sunday dinner, but also good leftovers for the week. Okay, we'll check back in a minute. Okay, we're ready to finish this up. That has been about 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes since I left you. It's got the ginger and the toasted sesame oil in there. If you do this, don't neglect those 2 ingredients in my opinion. They're kind of important. You can put, instead of edamame, you can put broccoli in here, any kind of vegetable you want. For example, if you put broccoli in here, I'd put it in about the same time I put the edamame, so it can cook down thoroughly and get soft, or to however you like to eat it, soft or al dente or crunchy. So the carrots and the edamame are going to be pretty soft, that is to say fully cooked. So let's see, I'm going to put a little more soy, and I'm going to put the cooked rice in here. And we're going to stir that around and let it fry for a little bit, hence dried rice. Just going to stir that around. Just reiterate, any kind of vegetable you like. This is a little bit on the not meaty side. I only had 2 chicken breasts, but sometimes I'd use 4. If you're in the mood for it to be meaty, or pork is really good in here. Beef is fine too. But chicken and pork are, I think, our favorites. So that's looking really, really good. I'm going to let that fry just for a minute. Now I have 4 eggs. I might have said 3 earlier, but this is a big dish, so we like the eggs kind of pull it all together. And when you put the eggs in there, of course, they cook quickly. So once you put the eggs in, you're close to done. So I also would sometimes like to put some red pepper flakes in here, or some kind of pepper if you like it hot. But depends on what you're in the mood for. So we're gonna have no red pepper flakes. This is all the seasoning in there is soy and ginger and pepper. Tiny bit of salt at the beginning, and the toasted sesame oil, and that's all there is to it. So let me stir this around a little bit more. And at this point, we're gonna put the egg in. And we'll just do this in real time because it cooks pretty quickly once the egg's in there. Of course, eggs cook fast, obviously. And just incorporate that uniformly. And they basically scramble, you know, in there with the rest of the ingredients. And that's looking spectacular. Just gonna let it sit for a few seconds while the eggs cook up. And then we'll kick it around and flop it over, toss it. And the eggs can even cook a little bit more once you turn the heat off. I'm on medium-high heat, kind of self-explanatory. All right, that's about it right there. We're gonna turn the heat off and just let it sit for a few minutes, like 5 or less, and it'll be ready to eat. I mean, that looks really great in my opinion. So I'll write down the description or write down the ingredients and the rough pattern of what you put in when. And this is one of our favorites. Give it a try. Don't be afraid to experiment with whatever vegetables you like, whatever meat you like. If you like pork, you can even drizzle a little bit of barbecue sauce in there, especially if it's pork, that'd be great. But this is our chicken fried rice. It changes a little bit each time I make it. I'll do my best to write down the ingredients and the quantities in the description, but good luck with it. It's really good. And we'll see you next time on the channel. Never know what you'll see. Maybe a hatchet, maybe a chainsaw, maybe a bike repair, who knows. All right, take care.